Hi friends, I thought that today it might be interesting to take one of the more complicated tunes in Tuba Skinny's repertoire and try to see what goes on in the way they present it. And I've decided to pick Oriental Strut. So what I'll do is I'll chat through what happens throughout the video and give you examples with clips from the video, and then right at the end I'll let you see the entire performance so you can see it complete. Now, Oriental Strut actually is one of the real jazz classics. It was composed in 1926 by Johnny Sincere, and in that same year it was recorded in Chicago by Louis Armstrong's Hot Five with Sincere himself on the banjo. And because of the recording techniques of those days, they had to keep recordings fairly short, so they just played a 3-minute version. And what they actually do is they go through an introduction, and then they play let's call the themes theme A, B and C. There are 3 different melodies, if you like. So theme A is 2 lots of 8 bars, which are very similar, so 8 bars repeated. And then they go into a theme B, which is 16 bars, and that leads very nicely into theme C, which is the main theme. It's 32 bars, it's really 16 twice. That is the main theme, and it's the one on which the musicians always play their improvised solos. Now in Louis's case, he played A, B, and then he played C just 3 times, and at the end of it he added 2 extra bars just to finish it off. We call those the coda, and that was his entire performance. And also he played it at a pretty gentle, leisurely tempo. Now in contrast, Tuba Skinny take 4 minutes playing this tune, even though they play it at a much faster tempo than Armstrong's. Now how does that happen? Well, what happens is that Tuba Skinny of course don't have to worry about limiting the amount of time available, they just play as long as it takes. But what they do is they play the introduction like Armstrong, they play theme A, theme B, then they play theme C twice, but then, unlike Armstrong, they go back to theme A again and repeat it and play theme B again, and then they play theme C 2 more times, and then they also add a little 2-bar coda, different from Armstrong's, but that's the way they do it. So their total performance, actually, I've calculated it, their total performance comes to 202 bars of music, whereas Armstrong's was just 138. This is what can happen, same tune, but totally different lengths of time spent on it. Now, before I go any further, I want to just point out one moment in this entire tune that to me seems the most important. It's only a couple of bars, but it's so distinctive that, for example, if I happened to be in a bar and there were a jazz band on the stage playing a tune and I wasn't particularly listening to it, and I suddenly heard this bar, I'd say straight away, Oriental Strut. It's the one that really gives the tune away. And what happens is at the beginning of the 3rd theme C, the main theme, it's nearly always started by the trombone as a solo, and he's in the key of F for those who are technically minded, and he plays a couple of bars on the key of F, da da, and then his next note is on the chord of D flat, which is pretty unusual to get when you're playing in the key of F, and it gives you a very sort of flattened sound, so you get da 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 da. And this, of course, every time they play theme C, whoever's soloing has to make sure they're in tune with that particular chord at that particular moment. So it's a fascinating little detail to watch out for whenever you're watching this performance. And before we do anything else, I'd like to show you Charlie Halloran playing that very phrase. Well, it's time now to look at the entire piece of music, and remember that it has an introduction and then 3 themes that we will call A, B, C, and each one of those themes has its own melody and its own chord structure that obviously the band has to master. The introduction, though, is just 8 bars establishing the key of D minor and sounding a little bit oriental. I'm going to have a crack at giving you some idea of how it goes with my cornet. try to give you some idea of how themes A and B and C begin, so you'll be able to recognise them when you eventually watch the final video. So theme A, if I can get it roughly right, starts with a few notes a bit like this. And then theme B goes like this, it rises up to a high note. And then theme C is the one that has that famous da flattened note. So it begins, played by the trombone usually, it begins like this. There you are then, so listen out for those three, it might help you a bit as you're picking out the different themes. And so now we're ready to begin to analyse the tune. Let's hear first those bars of introduction. So after that introduction, which uses a lot of D minor and G minor chords, we continue to use a fair number of D minor in the first theme, with, well, let's call it theme A, which is da 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 da. That's the sort of beginning of it, and it's basically 16 bars, of which you have 8 more or less repeated. Here we go with the beginning of theme A. So after theme A, which is really 16 bars made up of 2 sets of 8, which are virtually identical, we then move on to theme B, which is a complete 16 bars, there's no repetition in this one, and it's going to lead us nicely into the main theme C. But here is the start of theme B. Now after theme B we move on straight away to theme C. This is the really important theme in Oriental Strut, and traditionally it's always been played as a kind of solo by the trombone the first time round, and so we have Charlie playing it in this performance. And as it begins with that interesting, very distinctive 4 bars, da 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 da, and then the next 4 are very similar but not quite the same, da 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 da, so on a different chord. The first time round they're playing in the key of F, and that da da, I think that's the chord of D flat, very unusual, but that's what gives the this tune its particular flavour. So have a listen to Charlie establishing the theme for the first time. It's going to be played 3 more times later on, but he sets the standard, he shows us what the theme is, and he starts with that famous phrase. And when you watch the entire performance later, notice how Shay backs Charlie's solo by playing gently a little harmony in the background, as she so often does in Tuba Skinny performances. Anyway, she does that later on, of course, in his solo. And then he is followed by Craig, and also at the end of Craig's 32 bars, notice how he gets support from Shay and also from Charlie. Now at this point they do something quite different from what happens in the Armstrong recording. They decide, or Shay decides, they're going to go back to theme A, which of course doesn't happen with Armstrong, and that's one of the reasons why the Tuba Skinny performance takes rather longer. So Shay puts her hand on the head, that's her signal for going back up to the top. Watch that happen now. This time round they make theme A interesting by giving the first 8 of the 16 bars to Todd as a solo. After they complete the A section again, they go through the B section and so on for the third time, as it happens, into the C section. And this time round, it's a rather dramatic 16 bars from Shay, because she's taking the solo and she does it against stop chords. And by the way, just after she starts, listen out for that da da da, what she does with that particular note. Quite interesting. After Shay has played the first 16 bars against stops, Robin takes on the final 16 bars of the theme, also playing against stops. So they then go on to play theme C for the final time, full ensemble, very exciting. And as they come to the end, bear in mind the total theme is 32 bars. Over the last 2 or 3 bars they slow it down gently and then they add 2 more bars, a coda. It's quite a different coda from the one that Louis Armstrong used, where he ends up with a kind of da da dup dup. They don't do that. Tuba Skinny just slow it down gently, going down the scale a little bit, and you'll enjoy that equally, I think. So here's the end of the performance. Well, now it's time for you to have a watch at the entire performance, and I hope that as you do so, you'll enjoy spotting those little details that I've mentioned in my little analysis here. And may I also please recommend that you find the Louis Armstrong Hot 5 recording, which is also available on YouTube, and compare the two. I think you'll be really struck by the difference in tempo and the difference in treatment, but that's a very interesting thing to do. Anyway, from me for now, that's it. So bye bye from me.